probably the last best pieces of information for players now is clocker information and interpreting works. And Clocker G joins us. Gate, good morning.
Good morning. How are you guys?
We're doing great out here, Gate. I'm so happy to get you on the show finally, and give a quick introduction to Gate. And I know that's not your real name, but you're Gate to me. So, and Gate to everybody else in the game. But I'm going to go back to 1989 because that's the first year I got to Monmouth Park, and I was still very, very green in the game and was learning everything I could. And clocking horses was something I heard about, and at Golden Gate Fields, I know what happened, but I never saw it. I never really knew what it meant. I mean, you look at a watch and you watch a horse go by. What's the big deal? Well, I found out that it was a big deal. When you're not just clocking one horse, you're clocking many at the same time. And Gate and Tyrone's your cousin, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so Gate and his cousin Tyrone were the main clockers at Monmouth Park when I was there, and I think they still are to this day. And the odd part, which I didn't know was very odd because, like I said, I didn't know clockers all clock basically on the front side at the finish line. Gate and Tyrone set up on the backside, close to where basically the 5/8 pole would be, and they had a little diagonal shot over to the finish line, and that's where they would clock the horses. And I don't know how they did it. I still don't know how they do it. But the riders would come by as they're warming up and shout out I'm going to go 3/8. I'm going to go a half a mile, things like that. But part of the clocking back then, it was much harder to identify the horses. And I know Gate, you guys figured out a way to do that better. You put stuff on computers before everybody else did. And so, to this day, he's clocking. He finally put out a website, which you probably could have done 20 years ago, but it's clockerg.com, which we'll get into later. But talk about the finite, the little specialties of clocking. And it's not just the half mile. It's the after the half mile. It's things like that, especially at sales when you do some sale work. But Gate Artiste, longtime clocker, tell us a little bit about how you got started and what you're up to.
Okay, all right. Thank you for bringing me in, and Steve and Rick. I really appreciate it. I'm going to say some things probably that people may disagree with, but I have the proof if anybody wants to know. So I started out in Green Mountain in '69 racetrack in Green Mountain when I was like 14 years old, going there. And my cousin, he got me into it. Then I went on to college, and then when I was finished, he called me up and said they had a job opening for clocking. And I was working at a trucking company doing accounting at the time, and I said, man, I really like the racetrack. So I told my boss that I was sick, and I went there to see how it was. And when I lived in Philadelphia. When I was there, my boss, it was a local company, they came through and they saw me in the street playing ball, and they fired me on the spot. So I had to come back into clocking and take that job. So and at that time too, also when I was growing up, people called me Gate, and so when I got to the racetrack, and they had something called the starting gate, it was like crazy to me because everybody was getting confused, and they would say, no, Gate, we going to the gate. So it was like almost an omen for me. But the things that I wanted to say that, like Rick was saying, I started in '86 with the computer. I had my car broken into, and I had markings for many years over 1,100 horses, and it was stolen. I had to start over. Then I had my markings lost. I had to start over. I said, there has to be a better way. So I went to Apple, and I asked them about computers at the time, and they had something called the laptops at that time. It was like $3,500, $3,000. I said, man, that's too expensive. And the guy said, we got something that just came out. It's called the Macintosh Plus. He said, that starts at like $600. And he said, it's pretty bulky and everything. I said, hey, I could carry this around and put it in the stands. I said, let me have that. I didn't know nothing about computers or anything. I was up all night long putting stuff in. So I started developing the workouts in a database. I mean, not the workouts, the markings through a database. And what I did, I went to Bill Hancock at Garden State at the time. I asked him, can I go into the office and look at fold papers? And back when I came up, the clockers, they wouldn't allow them to do any of that, look at fold papers or nothing. But these guys were generous with me. They always helped me out. They said, yeah, Gate, look, here's the key. You go in at night and you can work. So I was doing it, and Bill Hancock came in the office that night. He said, Gate, what are you doing? I said, I'm putting the markings in of all the horses. He said, man, maybe we could do this with the entries and everything. He said, let me run by my people here at Garden State. So he developed I think they said an inside group to develop it. And then I met Sal Sinatra a couple years later, and Sal, we was talking, and he was saying that Kalina Nunn wanted him to put a program together there. So to me, these are little things, contributions that I did in the game with the computer, and this the things with the horse sales. I started doing the horse sales, as Rick said. I started that in 2001. And from there, I created myself a database to bet the 2-year-olds from the workouts. At that time, because I was a clocker, most of those guys was timing the horses to the wire, and they might go out another 8. Well, I'm always thought as a clocker, never stop your watch until a horse stops. So I was having horses going out in 46s and 45s, and so I created a Excel sheet that I gave to, brought it to the sales at that time, and I gave it to Robert Scanlon and a couple people. They really liked it. Nobody was doing it, so I don't know if people want to say it. I was the only one putting out a spreadsheet then. He said, let me take it to the sheiks and see if they like it or not. He said, I think this is a great idea. So anyway, I never heard nothing back about that. Another thing I didn't hear about. Next thing I know, people was doing it. Everybody's doing it. So next thing I said, okay, it was a girl that worked at Deli Racing called Francine. And I used to tell her about it. She said, maybe that'd be a good tool for the Deli Racing Forum, Gate. And I told her I was betting 2 years off in this. So she said, you should contact somebody. I contacted Deli Racing Forum. I spoke to someone, never got his name. And I explained to him, I said, I think this will be a great handicapping tool. He said, nobody ever brought that to our attention. I said, yeah, I've been doing it for a couple of years now, and it's been working out. He said, let me get back to you. Never heard nothing back with him. I had spoke to a guy named Mike at the racetrack at Monmouth at the time, and I told him my idea, and I said, let's put this together, Mike. Well, anyway, Mike went to the racing farm, and basically, you know the story now. You see breeze fakes. So that's another contribution I did in the industry. And at the sales company, everybody started gouging out horses now because they could sell more when they see faster times. And I used to go online and print. I had to do the whole book, the sales book, manually in Excels and everything. After about, 7 to 8 years, I see all the sales companies now put out the Excel sheet just like I was doing back in the day.
Absolutely.
So, these are things that I contributed to this industry that nobody know about, and I challenge anybody to dispute it. That I basically started all that stuff.
Well, what's great is, and now, you're one of the most respected clockers, especially on the East Coast. Everybody, between you and Tyrone clocking horses, and you don't miss many. And now you've taken all that knowledge over the years, and you've finally, said, let's share it with people. So you have your new website, clockerg.com, and tell us a little bit about what you offer on there, and I think your price point is very, very fair, and talk about what you offer on that website.
Okay, so how that started, Steve and Rick, was I work with Uptown Charlie Brown Partners, and we had I think
nice.
at the time we had maybe 300 or 400 partners, and they kept convincing me because I was betting with them, personally with them. They said, Gate, you need to put this up. And I said, I don't want to deal with people. I'm a kind of quiet guy. I don't want to deal with people. So he said, I'll do it. He said, can you give me all of your data from the sales, and we'll work it out for whatever you put on there, the OKs, your stars, and everything. We'll put it online, and we'll give it to, we're just going to do it with our partners in Uptown Charlie Brown. I said, okay, do it. So it was working out. Everybody was having fun. I had some older person call me, said him and her husband used to go play golf all the time. They said because I was picking so many winners at the time, they stopped going to the golf course. they was waiting for Gates. They was waiting for Gates' pick to come through and everything. So I did that for 8 years with him. So I decided this year that I told my daughter, I said, listen, if you could build me a website or something, maybe we could go public with this and see where it goes. And I said, because people have been happy with it, with the partners. I said, let's see how it work out. So, so we went, public this year, like Rick was saying. And what it is when I go to the sales, I, time all the horses, I gallop them out. And I pick my picks that I like out of sales. They have horses that pay a lot of money, $300,000 or $400,000, $500,000 that I basically personally don't like. But hey, that's this game is about opinion. So that's the best thing about it is everybody has an opinion. But I just try to give my customers, say, listen, I didn't like this horse. He may be in a sale with a horse that somebody paid $50,000 for and they paid $300,000. And I tell them, listen, I like the one that they paid $50,000 for over that one. And sometimes I beat those horses. So that's how I kind of started with that. And people were seeing that I was having success with that. And, so they kept joining back up. So that's why I decided to go public this year and see how it's going to work out. The main thing is a lot of people always sharing stuff. That was my own concerns and just plus dealing with people. And I didn't want to deal with people. So I told my daughter, I'm not dealing with nobody. We're going to continue letting the information go through the Uptown Charlie Brown people, and she could help me build the website. So, I mean, so I think it's doing good. I had a guy call me this morning. He had heard that I was going on. He said, he know you very well, Steve. He said, you're a good friend of his. He said, tell Steve that I am very satisfied with what you are putting out, and you got a good angle. So he told me to put that out to you.
I appreciate that. I love the idea, and this is obviously for 2-year-olds that we're essentially from now until early next year, the 2-year-olds that are debuting. I mean, every day, and it doesn't have to be at Saratoga or Santa Anita or Del Mar. Delaware and anywhere else.
It's all over. Yes.
Yeah, these horses are going to show up. Yeah.
Yes. It's whenever they show up. And like I said, I have a group that look that up every night. They go through the off of my information they have. They go through the the daily racing form and they put it out and they send an email out to the customers and everything. Yeah, the entries, and they send it out. And and like I said, I get testimonials of people doing good and everything. Me, myself, I bet here and there on them. I don't, bet on all of them, but here and there I'll bet. Because I have some people that I deal with privately that I do one-on-one with them. So, the ones I really like, I usually, them and I, do things together. But other than that, I think it's a good tool for people.
It's a terrific idea. The 2-year-old sale videos became, maybe in the last, 7-8 years, there were a few different people who identified, that you could go to the OBS site and also to Phasic for Timonium and look at get an idea of what these horses, especially the cheap ones. And you're sort of hinting that, that's part of the insight. It's clockerg.com. Gate, I got to get Tony Olivato on here now, but I'm delighted to meet you this way. And Hammer raved about you.
All right, it was a pleasure for you guys to give me the introduction and all.
You got it, and we'll
all right, thank you,
check
Rick,
in. I just signed up. I literally just signed up too. So $35 a month.
You can't beat it.
It'll pay for itself with one horse.
All right, I appreciate it.
Thank you, Gate.